couple of months ago, I bought the LG G5 to replace the LG C1 that I've been using for the past 5 years. Now, deciding on this TV was a really tough decision. It was between this or the Samsung S95F. But after using the LG G5 for the last month or two, a few things were beginning to frustrate me. And so I did what any sane person would have done. And last week, I also bought the Samsung S95F. Now, this video isn't sponsored. I bought both of these with my own money. And so I hope you find this useful on my honest thoughts on both of these TVs. And hopefully it helps you when deciding on which TV to buy. Now, as far as the unboxing experience goes, both are pretty straightforward. Just excuse the footage of unboxing the LG G5. I genuinely didn't plan on making a video about this, so I didn't really properly film anything. And anyway, who remembers unboxing their last TV? All I will say is that I would recommend going for 2 people, especially if you do go for one of the larger size models. But overall, it's a pretty straightforward experience with both of the TVs this year, including a stand in the box. Previously, the LG G5 or LG G4, I believe, was wall mount only. So I'm grateful there is now a stand in the box too. Now, in terms of sizes, these TVs come in a range of sizes, as you would expect. The Samsung S95F comes in 55, 65, 77 and 83 inch sizes, whereas the LG G5 ranges from as small as 48 right through to 97 inches, if you have the budget, of course. But for the size of the room this TV will end up in, I just went for the 55 inch models for both, and also makes it easier to compare them as well. And the Samsung is definitely thinner than the LG panel, if you care about that. Considering this isn't like mini LED or anything like that, I did think the LG panel would be like much thinner than what we've got here. But again, generally speaking, once the TV is set up and on its stand or on a wall, you're not really going to care or really even notice. Now, in terms of the key differences, this is really where I found most of my decisions boiled down to between the two. Now, the LG G5 offers true Dolby Vision on a glossy display, whereas the Samsung S95F has a very good anti-glare matte coating, along with another benefit, or some would say, of a One Connect box, which can basically move all of the messy wiring, where you're wiring all your devices in, from the back of the TV and replaces it with one single cable that runs to this One Connect box. Now, in terms of my specific use case, I guess here, let's talk about that. So I stream shows on, all the various streaming services. I use an Apple TV. I play console games. More recently, I've been playing PC games. And so it's a real mixed bag when it comes to my, actual day-to-day use, which I think is probably similar to how a lot of people use their TVs nowadays. For my use, there's no live TV. I barely touch the smart features. I don't game directly on the TV, but I will touch on those later in this video. Now, firstly, let's just talk specs and connectivity. So the LG G5 is a 4K OLED powered by the A11 AI processor with support for Dolby Vision and up to 120 Hz native or up to 165 Hz with variable refresh rates. There are 4 HDMI ports, all supporting 4K 120, one of which supports eARC. There's 3 USB-A, 1 Ethernet, and 1 optical, whereas the Samsung S95F is also, again, 4K OLED display, powered by Samsung's NQ4 AI Gen 3 processor, with support for HDR10+. There's no Dolby Vision here, but up to 100 Hz or up to 165 with variable refresh rates. There are again 4 HDMI ports, all 4 supporting 165 Hz, and 1 supporting eARC, 3 USB-A, 1 USB-C, Ethernet, and optical, which is all provided by the separate One Connect box, which again can either attach directly to the TV stand or be connected by up to 2.5 meters away with the included cable, or up to 5 meters away with a cable purchased separately. Now, this is actually one of the big reasons why I previously bought the S95C for my living room, because I wanted to move all of the messy wiring away from behind the TV as I then wall mounted my TV in, yes, I know, r/TV too high, above my fireplace. Except when I bought this TV, Samsung decided to not make any cables longer than what came with the box. So now I'm stuck with an awkwardly placed shelf with the One Connect box balanced precariously on top, which my cat actually loves sitting on, as it's always nice and warm up there. So there's that at least. And then we have the big differences between these two, which is LG's Web OS software compared to Samsung's Tizen software. Now, both of these have their positives and of course their negatives. With the LG G5, Web OS is an interface that you can navigate using the remote control, which acts as a bit of a mouse cursor that you control by waving the remote around, which I actually don't mind. It's kind of pretty intuitive. And then Samsung's Tizen is a similar, but I would say less confusing interface that is normally controlled with a, normal remote control. And all of this is really where LG really pushed me to also buy the S95F. Now, firstly, during setup, you are encouraged to use the LG ThinQ app to just, speed through the whole setup process, which for me just outright failed and refused to work. So I ended up having to go through the setup steps manually. And then secondly, now I know every year we hear about how the processors have been upgraded to make these, smart TVs incredibly fast and AI powered. AI is just in everything nowadays. But how is it that an Apple TV is still just so much better and smoother than my smart TV interface, any smart TV interface? And why does both LG and Samsung just have so much bloatware installed right out of the box? Browsing around WebOS and launching various streaming apps is still quite sluggish at times. And even just trying to change input sources is just a really delayed nightmare. Look, watch me as I do what I do most evenings. I switch on the TV, I switch on my gaming PC, and I try to change the input source to my PC's HDMI inputs.
Turn off, and then change recent inputs. And turn that off. And yeah, just lots of adverts and bloat stuff.
Off the help.
There we go. Now it's fast because we've turned all of the features off.
Now, I'm not sure what's happened here because even on my LG C1 from 5 years ago, it takes less than half as long to do the same thing. And that's not to say Samsung's Tizen is any better. I find it slightly quicker when browsing around the smart interface, but it can still be very sluggish at times. Now, this is really the reason why so many people will just, slap an external box like a Apple TV or a Google TV and then just permanently set their TV inputs to just that and then control the rest from the Apple TV or Google TV remote instead. Speaking of which, if you do like using the Samsung interface, then that's another key feature of the Samsung S95F, as you will have native integration with the SmartThings platform, including integrating your Samsung phone device and even being able to control some TV functions with the Samsung Galaxy Watch that you just don't get on an LG. Now, of course, if you do have, other LG appliances around your home, then you might be able to make better use of the whole kind of ThinQ integration. But with all of that said, you're going to spend a lot more time watching content on this TV than you will be, browsing through the menu system. Now, both of these TVs are pretty color accurate and have various modes for movies, such as the filmmaker mode to watch movies as the director intended. And both TVs are pretty even overall when it comes to brightness. Now, the S95F does take the edge in bright environments because of that insanely good anti-reflective coating. It really is something that you do have to see in person. Viewing angles are excellent, even when placed directly in front of, bright light sources like we are here, and with one that doesn't cause any major noticeable image quality degradation. However, I will say, and you might be able to see it behind me, the dark areas of the Samsung S95F, they are really dark. You can't really see much, whereas on the LG, you can quite clearly see, like on this screensaver, like the streets and the darker areas, you can see a lot more on the LG than you can on Samsung's panel. Now, with that said, if you do have the opportunity to put these two TVs side by side, that is when you will see the LG G5's glossy screen just really, really stand out. Number one, because that glossy display really does show off how good Samsung's anti-reflective coating is. But two, because you will notice much kind of richer and I guess darker, is that the same thing? Richer, darker blacks on the LG, a Samsung does kind of have to raise the black tones to compensate for that anti-glare coating. And also, I guess 3, the LG G5 supports Dolby Vision, whereas Samsung still does not, opting for HDR10+ instead. Now, to some people, not having Dolby Vision is a reason to immediately buy the LG, but to others, once you actually have the TV set up and you're watching content, I would argue that you probably couldn't tell the difference, especially if you don't have these TVs side by side like we do here. Now, as far as the speakers go, I would recommend still getting a soundbar or surround sound with either of these TVs. It's actually why a lot of the time these TVs come with a free soundbar. But if you are just casually watching TV, you know, with the family, then I would say that the LG G5 has the slight edge here. Even though the LG technically delivers less wattage, up to 60 watts compared to 70 watts for the Samsung, it just sounds better, sounds fuller than the Samsung does. Whereas if you do want the very best experience, then again, either a soundbar or just a properly wide speaker setup would obviously be better. I actually made a video comparing the latest Sonos soundbar to a traditional 5.1 setup, so I'll link that in the description down below. Now, many of my hours are spent playing games every evening on both of these TVs, both console gaming, which both of these TVs have been pretty flawless at, and more recently PC gaming, where you can actually benefit from that highest 165Hz refresh rates. And after putting in so many hours on games like Fortnite, the new Doom recently, they both perform the same. There's no real noticeable difference in the gaming experience that I can tell, again, with that comment around the kind of crushed blacks on the Samsung side of things. Now, you do get an ever so slightly faster input lag on the Samsung, just under 10 milliseconds compared to the LG. The Samsung does have this whole like gaming hub, which offers convenient access to the game directly on the TV. You can even pair like a Bluetooth controller. And for casual gamers, this is cool. Like, you can stream games from Xbox Cloud, but if you are playing any games that involve, you know, reaction times, especially online, like multiplayer games, then I just found the gaming experience pretty bad and kind of unplayable.
Very, very laggy though.
It is very reliant on your connection speed. So ideally, you want the TV to be wired in rather than wireless, except the wired connection on both of these TVs actually is capped at 100 meg. So actually you get faster speeds over Wi-Fi, except Wi-Fi, so not very reliable at times. Now, pricing is always one that's worth discussing, but always difficult because the offers on both of these TVs are constantly changing. So depending on the time of the year, the Samsung is likely to have more discounts available via things like, you know, coupon codes, trading deals, even sometimes free gifts, whereas the LG doesn't usually have as many going after the initial launch. Plus, I actually also factored in how much I could sell my old LG C1 for when pricing both up, because, well, honestly, the LG C1 is still an excellent TV and incredible value for money. And whilst I would love for you to, of course, click on the affiliate links down below to go order one for yourself, it's also worth just checking out other retailers, since they often have better deals than buying direct from either Samsung or LG. So when I bought my LG TV, for example, I actually got a free soundbar included, which I then sold and kind of caught some money back from the TV, and an extra year's warranty. So it is just worth looking around above the manufacturer's own websites. And then speaking of warranty, it varies, of course, depending on where you are buying one from. But here in the UK, with both of these TVs, they come with a 5-year warranty, and actually it's kind of more like a 6-year warranty due to consumer law here. But I would check what extended warranties are available in your own country, depending on how long you're planning on keeping your TV for, since most people just tend to keep them for, well, a very, very long time. Now, there are other issues to consider. Now, I've heard that if you opt for the 83-inch Samsung S95F, this model doesn't use Samsung's QD OLED panel. Instead, it actually uses the LG Tandem RGB panel, which is same as the LG G5, but I can't personally comment on that because I just couldn't afford to buy the 83-inch model since I was buying two of them, but it is worth being aware of that. And another common thread that I've seen whilst browsing Reddit on these two TVs is Samsung is definitely perceived as having worse quality control. And that may be true, but it definitely will come down to personal experience here. I did have to return a few of their older widescreen G9 monitors before I got one that would work as like actually advertised. But since then, I've not seen any issues, like personally from the S95C that I own and all the variants of the G9 ultra wide screens that I've purchased since. So I'm also going to add something in here. I thought I'd also test out their returns policies, and LG, absolutely fine. I can box up the TV, send it back to them, get a full refund. Samsung want to charge me £450 to return the TV. And this is like a week after buying it, so we're within our 14-day, kind of cooling off period. They're charging £50 for the courier to come and collect it, and also 20% of the price that we paid because we've opened the box. £450 to return a £2,000 TV, with the reason being that we've actually found it cheaper elsewhere. That seems ridiculous, and maybe a reason why you wouldn't want to buy the Samsung TV. Maybe you should buy the LG instead. But yeah, I just thought I'd provide that level of insight into the TV kind of returns process, because that would really put me off buying a Samsung product on the basis that I have to pay to return it, and pay like 25% basically of the price, like a quarter of the price the thing cost me, which just seems insane. Now, I would recommend the Samsung if you are placing it in a bright room. You might want to move the One Connect box away from where the TV is placed, just to keep things like super clean, and especially if you can get the Samsung S95F at a good price, maybe a nice discount or something. Again, the links below to go look at those. Whereas the LG offers the better overall picture quality, I would say, but with a glossy display that could be problematic in bright environments, albeit at a price that's probably going to be slightly more than the Samsung. But honestly, they are both amazing TVs, and unless you are literally putting them side by side like we are here, I don't think you're going to be disappointed. Now, if you want to see my comparison of a Sonos setup versus a traditional 5.1 setup, then click here. Otherwise, watch this one, and I'll see you in the next video.